And matter of fact, is we're going to move a moment into parents saying, what's next year going to look like? And that's a lot of questions we got on Facebook, and that touches on something you said. Right before we move to that, though, you hear from people saying, we're worried about the children who were struggling, who don't have perhaps the support at home for the learning environment, who even with a computer at home, and I know you've put a lot in there, might be sharing it a lot. Just before I sat down with you, there was a national cable broadcast that said education experts worry students could fall behind. But especially for those children who were having trouble, don't have the support at home, how are we going to make sure that they and others don't fall behind in this grand experiment that we're all having to take part in?
Well, I think we have to approach it with the assumption that kids who aren't having face-to-face contact are falling behind in some instances. I think, if and I don't care what the social economic factors are, but any parent that's sitting at home with multiple children in school is probably struggling right now, managing all those different calendars and temperaments. And so we recognize that this is a reality that we're going to have to address. I think coming back face-to-face, whenever that happens, mental health is going to be at the forefront. Getting kids and adults actually acclimated around being around each other. I mean, we're really on some very basic Maslow, safety and security. We've really got to figure out how to make people feel comfortable. And I just think this is going to take time and a lot of communication.
Doctor, that segues very neatly into next year, talking about the August timeframe. Janice Konigsberg asked, as a teacher, are we going to reopen? Are we going to be in the schools in August? And I know to some extent you need a crystal ball for that, but what is your sense?
Well, as of right now, all of our plans are working towards our calendared start date. But let me be very clear with the audience that all possibilities are open at this point. We don't, so if that means a revision to the calendar, I think our board is absolutely understands that could be a possibility. As you hear more around the national dialogue, the sort of pushing things back maybe to after Labor Day, but it depends. There's also a lot of conversations around the second wave beginning in the fall.
Coronavirus, right?
Right, coronavirus. So this idea of, do we push it back? Do we try to get as much time in on the early side? But even if we keep our traditional dates, will the social distancing guidelines be lifted? Now that the states are moving towards reopening, well, we're going to see what happens from that. And so we don't know what's going to happen with the reopening of our states and how it's going to impact us over the summer.
And Dr. Fennoy, again, I know you need a crystal ball because it goes to testing, it goes to what you called about a second wave. How much does reopening help, or do we see another surge? Nonetheless, Beth Clark Rubel asked, what does the return to school look like? And I think in that question, does that mean children are wearing masks to schools? What kind of preps do you all have in terms of supplies, a mask, extra cleaning supplies? What's the cafeteria going to look like if they go back to school? Will kids be on shifts? I know there's a million things on your plate, but give people a little sense of that. And just as you start that, also speak to the date would be August what if we went back on a normal time frame?
Well, I think our normal calendar date is like August 11th or something like that.
So again, to Beth's question, what's it look like going back?
Well, no one knows. I mean, we literally have over 30 committees working on every possible scenario. And so you make reference to personal protective equipment, masks. It could be standard. And I don't, you see going into grocery stores, going in other stores. So what makes a school any different? The question is, can you have that much supply on hand? And so, we've definitely ordered many masks and gloves, but the question, it's very expensive for us because we have to buy in such volume, not for our students, but also all of our employees, which is in excess of 23,000 employees. And so when you think about, redirecting funds to try to accommodate that growth, again, do the manufacturers even have the capability to outfit every child in America to go to schools? So we basically order things now to get in line for these possibilities. They won't be delivered anytime soon, as our healthcare professionals are still the ones who get priority. But every possible scenario that I think our audience is coming up with, we're considering all of them.
Jasmine Vidal says, how are they going to have the kids practice social distancing, Doctor, when school's open? What's your vision for that? You've touched on it a bit, but this is what we're hearing again and again.
Yeah, lots of training, lots of preemptive work before they get in. I mean, there are conversations around bringing kids back in shifts, sort of, our schools weren't built for social distancing. Ask yourself, in the traditional high school or middle school, when kids, switch classes between, are we going to allow them to do that? And so I mean, when I say we're looking at potentially not having kids switch classes and maybe teachers switch classes, we're looking at, different sort of shifts of kids coming in and out of the building to delay or to minimize the number of kids. We have high schools that have over 3,000 children, 3,000 kids. And so again, when I'm sounding kind of wishy-washy because every scenario is possible.
We're all learning this together.
Yeah, we're all trying to figure, and there isn't a school system in the country. I'm on calls every single day and night, and everyone is looking at all kinds of scenarios.
Susan Sheridan Russo says, and you touched on it earlier, but I want you to go a little deeper with it if you can. How will social distancing be handled when busing students to school? You touched on it earlier, but it's worth reiterating.
Yeah, I think, right now the teams are looking at creating a really comprehensive registration process. We may be forced to run multiple. So normal, I may run 40 kids to a school. I may have to decrease that to 20 and run a second shift. But then there's a cost associated with running that bus for a second wave. It could also mean that kids are, get to school late or really early. So when I tell you we're trying to look, it's like a big Rubik's Cube. It's like the Matrix. We're just trying to, what are all these scenarios look like? We'll probably at some point this summer ask the families if they'd even be willing to put their kids on a bus. That will probably drive what happens with social distancing on buses, just on the number of families that say we're going to opt out of it this year.
Nicole and Kenny, and again, you touched on it a bit, but all of these points are worth reevaluating and touching on again. She says, Doctor, and what are the plans in case there's a second wave this fall? You mentioned it a while ago.
Yeah, so I mean, again, the good news is that we've kind of experienced it, experimented with it. So I think we're equipped to make sure that every child has a device, and our teachers, like we were very, very blessed in Palm Beach County. We had over 2,000 Google certified teachers who were the mainstay in helping all of our other educators learn how to do Google Classrooms. Again, speaking from my own experience, it was not a transition for my child because Google Classrooms were part of his daily experience anyway. So he didn't have to get taught. But what we realized is that we probably needed to orient parents. We didn't get a chance to teach parents how to do this. We just kind of rolled it out in the middle of the crisis. So we will definitely be reevaluating the whole process, fine-tuning it, making it better, and then rolling it out again if necessary.
Beth Giddings said, and again, this is a point I hear again and again, I hear that some parents are already afraid to send students back in the fall. Will our schools offer an online option that students can work from home and stay enrolled in her current public school? Beth Giddings is a teacher. Again, you touched on this, but this is one we get a lot.
Mm-hmm. So as of right now, it's become abundantly clear that we will have to maintain sort of this distance learning platform for our families while they're enrolled in their traditional schools. Now, again, all the details are being worked out, but that one I'm pretty confident on. I'm hearing from a lot of parents who just don't have the confidence. I mean, think about it. Our schools are already, my children already come home with colds all the time. So, it's going to be like that. So I think for parents who are opting out, we will have a solution for them.